I think it's fair to say that was a pretty decent qualifying in Mexico, but I think what's more important and more juicy, I can just smell a little bit of drama alert on the horizon, not here just yet. However, Q3, big incident at the end. No spoilers just yet, don't worry. But if you haven't seen it and you want to find out, don't watch this. Watch quali first, then come back. But yes, looks like there could be a few investigations going on, and potentially our pole sitter, Max Verstappen, it might get taken away from him. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. First of all, let's just get the formalities out the way. Timings, the order, then we'll have a bit more of a casual chat, a little debate, and then we'll jump down into the comments after the video and have a chat down there. Right, Max Verstappen, 1:14.758, your current pole position lap time. Again, that could change a little bit later on. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Charles Leclerc P2 for Ferrari, Sebastian Vettel P3 for Ferrari. So the first time since the summer break that it's not a Ferrari on pole position, it's a Red Bull. So yeah, Red Bull have got, well, since Mercedes have had a pole position, Red Bull have had 2, courtesy of Max Verstappen, and Ferrari have had about 900. So that's brilliant for them. Mercedes, their lead driver Lewis Hamilton down in P4. Alex Albon, a career best P5. Valtteri Bottas, well, really disappointing end to Q3, down in P6, a really heavy shunt. Initially, I was a little bit worried for him, but he's okay. Going to see the doctors and the ladies and gents down there at the medical centre as we speak, so fingers crossed he's all okay for the race tomorrow. Best of the rest, again, unbelievably, the Chile Master, he is on fire, living up to his name, literally. Once again P7 for Carlos Sainz, once again P8 for Lando Norris. It's 9 apiece in the quali battle for the 2 McLaren, so those two, we all know the Uddy-Buddy rivalry. Uddy-Buddy? Yeah, we'll stick with that. The relationship those two have, which is lovely to see in Formula 1, but they'll really want to just get one over the other in the final few rounds. Then the 2 Toro Rossos that initially was showing good pace in practice, and despite Pierre Gasly waking up this morning with a little bit of an icky tummy, blimey, what is today's video? P9 for Danny Kvyat and P10 for Pierre Gasly. Moving on into the bottom 10, Sergio Perez, the home hero, Checo himself, P11. And whilst the crowd today probably would have loved to see him go into Q3 and really fight for best of the rest, I think P11 is going to be a really strong position for Sergio tomorrow. We'll start on the fresh tyres, we'll start on a better strategy, and whilst he might struggle a little bit against the McLarens, Racing Point traditionally have pretty good straight line pace, so I reckon they could have a good race tomorrow, Sergio Perez, especially on the opening lap. Watch out for that pink car. Then came the 2 Renaults that did barely any running this morning in practice with a hydraulic leak going into the radiator. I'm not very technical, but I know that's not a good thing. So P12 and 13 after the absolute storm that's been going on for them this week, I think they'll be content with that. Then came the 2 Alfa Romeo cars. I think actually both of those 2 drivers, Raikkonen 14th, Giovinazzi 15th, they'll be happy with that. I think the team were looking at potentially one or even both cars going out in Q1. They had a better pace than Haas F1, just got in front of Lance Stroll as well, so they'll be content with that, but I think it'll be a difficult race for those 2 tomorrow. Lance Stroll down in P16, out in Q1 again. It seemed to be that bug he had at the beginning of the season, always out in Q1. That seemed to be trickling away a little bit over recent Grand Prix, but just missed out going into Q2, but I don't think this is a track which really suits their car, so it doesn't surprise me too much. What does surprise me is the pace of the Haas car. Miles off Q2. Grosjean had a spin early on. Magnussen had to abort his lap because of Grosjean's spin. They just couldn't get the tyres working. Absolute mess. And your final 2, George Russell, P19, no surprise there. He practically lives in P19 in 2019. And Robert Kubica, despite not doing FP1, I don't know what that's got to do with it, he was last in P20. About 1.5 seconds off his teammate. And also, I might as well, for today's episode, we'll start from the back. Sometimes we start from the front, but while I was just talking about Williams, might as well start with them. Not really a lot to say, as per usual. Russell, within a second of potentially going through into Q2, that's strong from George Russell. They're one of the many teams now, though, that on the grid are just saying, we've just got to crack through these final few Grand Prix. We've already started on next year's car. The team are confident for next year's car. And for Robert Kubica, who was 1.5 seconds off his teammate, what an incredible comeback he's had. And I will keep saying that forever. Forever and ever and ever. But for him, how demoralising is this end to the season? Knowing that the team have given up on the car, he's ending his Formula 1 career. He's walking away. And the legacy he once had, I definitely think has been tarnished a fair bit after returning with Williams. So I don't expect a good end to the season for them. Likewise with Haas F1, I think really those 4 drivers, Magnussen, Grosjean, Russell and Kubica, for the rest of the Grand Prix, the rest of Grand Prix left in the season, I think they'll all be out in Q1. Haas have said categorically they're giving up on this year. They've had so many troubles and just Magnussen, Grosjean, boys, let's just get through it. That's what they're saying. So I can completely understand why they're down there. But that car did not look great. Williams isn't quick, but it looked planted. That Haas car was all over the shop. Both drivers just couldn't find any grip. It's been a reoccurring story all through the season. Not a big surprise. Lance Stroll, I generally spoke about him a second ago. He'd been on a good little string of good qualifying results and practice. Looked to be on pace with Sergio Perez, but when push came to shove in that session out in Q1, I don't think a Racing Point starting that far down is likely to get points, but Lance Stroll, very good at race starts and is much better in race pace, so I wouldn't count him out. Giovinazzi, finally out-qualified by Kimi Räikkönen. He's been the more consistent of the two in the second half of the season, I would say. Giovinazzi hasn't got as many points, I believe, in the second half of the season as Kimi Räikkönen, but both of them definitely more level on pace than that they were in Australia. Räikkönen got into Q3 in Monza, so it's not been completely Giovinazzi's way, but once again, those two right next to each other, and Giovinazzi started the year always out in Q1, always at the back. I think this is another race where you can clearly see progress has been made, but again, I think it'll be difficult for them to score points tomorrow. Renault, again, practiced, no running. And considering just the mess of this brake bias, this driver aid system, I think they really just need a really quiet weekend. Try and pick up some points if they can. Just crawl over the line in 5th place if they can in the Constructors' Championship. Because now they've lost those points from Japan. And Racing Point got a double points finish in Japan. Again, they always seem to get double points finishes in Japan. They're getting closer and closer. And potentially Renault could finish down in 6th. McLaren, it's a given. They're going to finish in 4th now. So well done to them. Not 100% confirmed, but very, very, very likely. Racing Point, they're going to be on their tails, but I think if Renault just keep it quiet this weekend, just stay out of the light if they can, stay away from penalties if they can, that'll be, I imagine, will be the target for them. But we know how hungry Ricciardo is. We know Hülkenberg, he seems to have really turned it up a notch in the second half of the year, especially once it was announced that he won't be staying with Renault. I think he's been much better. So I don't know, keep an eye out for both of them. They're both very good drivers, so I'm not discounting them for tomorrow. And the car is one of those cars which sometimes can come alive in the race. So starting on the alternate strategy, like Sergio Perez, I think could work for them. Perez, who is in P11, he's going to have that home crowd and that mighty stadium section. That's going to be pushing him on. I think we could see a best of the rest performance from Sergio Perez tomorrow. His fight, I think, will be against the McLarens, Gasly and Kvyat. As I said earlier, Gasly a little bit of an icky tummy. I think did a strong job getting through into the top 10. Danny Kvyat seemed to have the edge anyway this weekend over Pierre, but 9th and 10th at a circuit which you would argue, does have a fatty straight. There's no denying that. Not so much relying on engine power due to the high altitude of the circuit. I think that's a strong result here today. They did well here last year, if I remember rightly, but my memory's not great. I'm pretty sure they both DNF'd in the race, but I think in qualifying they actually did okay. Norris, P8, he will just beg for a clean race tomorrow. Likewise with Carlos Sainz. They're doing so well at the moment, McLaren. Clearly best of the rest, and I think as the season winds down, they can be very happy. Valtteri Bottas, on the other hand, this is where things get messy. Final run in Q3. Slight oversteer into the outside wall, then hits the is it Tech Pro barrier, I think is the official term for it. Big incident. I was, like I said, a little bit nervous for him, but he seems to be all okay. And I wouldn't imagine there will be a penalty for tomorrow. They might change the chassis. They might do a pit lane start, and then, yeah, that'll be pretty, well, detrimental to his championship hopes. However, the more interesting factor here is that potentially Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen didn't back off when the yellow flags were being flown. There wasn't a yellow flag on the flashy sign. Ferrari's had it on their steering wheels. It all gets very messy, and because I've got to get this video out, because, you know, I would like to sleep, if you allow me, I'm not 100% sure. So what I would say, and this is the kind of thing that Formula 1 love to leave for the last minute. We find out 10 minutes before the Grand Prix. It's all very messy. So currently Verstappen's your pole sitter, but it could be both Verstappen and Hamilton get penalties for ignoring yellow flags. Yes, keep an eye on that one. Anyway, moving on to the more of the fun stuff. Driver of the day and ones to watch tomorrow. I found it difficult, actually, to pick a driver of the day. I think today's grid, I mean, even, we'll say without penalties, I'm basing this on, I think today's grid is pretty bog standard. There's no one that's really screaming to me that's out of position. The only one that I can say, you know what, I didn't expect that, was a Max Verstappen pole position. And I know most of you in the comments over the last couple of days have said it's going to be a Verstappen pole, but I thought Ferrari had it. In practice, they looked really good. Even in the early stages of qualifying, they looked really good. So I've got to give it to Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz, consistency once again. And although Perez, the crowd would have loved him to be in Q3, I think P11 is the perfect place to be. Ones to watch tomorrow, again, we don't know what's the situation with Valtteri Bottas. We don't know the situation with penalties to Verstappen, to Hamilton, potentially. I mean, Hamilton's not had a clean race here since 2016, since he won it. He's not been on the podium since 2016. We don't know what's going to happen. I would imagine they would let us know fairly quickly, but it's Formula 1. So ones to watch, Valtteri Bottas for sure, even if he stays P6. He's got a race on his hands to stay in the title hunt. Hamilton has to outscore him by 14 points, but I still think Valtteri, this Valtteri 2.0 that we've seen on occasion in 2019, really needs to show up over the next few Grand Prix. Alex Alban starting 5th. Max Verstappen got pole position, but potentially Verstappen and Hamilton could move down, so Alban could be in a fight for a podium straight off the start. But more interestingly, Verstappen starting on first, won't get the run into turn 1 following another car, and I've just got this vision of Alban just getting a fatty slipstream, overtaking the two Ferraris, overtaking Verstappen, everyone takes each other out, Alban wins. Bit far-fetched, I know. Sergio Perez, I've banged on about him far enough. Charles Leclerc, I've put on there. Bit of a surprise, but I think him and Verstappen could have a really titanic battle tomorrow, and definitely ones to watch. A little bit like why I've put Norris on there. Down into turn 1. It's all about who can get the best slipstream, who can be the bravest, and it's the kind of turn where, especially turns 1, 2 and 3, very, very quick, coming after that long straight, it's the real make or break part of the Grand Prix. Very easy just to have a bit of contact, get a puncher, race over. But it's also very easy to go off. It's also very easy to make up a lot of positions. So I'm really looking forward to that tomorrow. And actually, I'm really looking forward to the race. A championship challenge is on the line. Can Verstappen get his 3rd win of 2019? Yeah, his 3rd win of 2019. Can Leclerc get his 3rd win of 2019? Can Sebastian Vettel get his 2nd win of 2019? Or can Mercedes or Alex Albon spring a surprise? I'm looking forward to it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I will see you down there in just a moment. If you are new and you've made it this far, feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.